am finalizing a civil divorce with the grace of Allah. What are you grateful for? Why? Why would somebody be grateful for something like that? Like, with the gratitude comes grief. I am not going to deny that there is grief. It is a process. As I've mentioned in the video, the drop on Abu Dhabi vlog, travel vlog, it's been a year and a half now since leaving there. And it'll be a year since filing for divorce in August. And not to overshare, but I think that it's important to talk about civil and religious, quote unquote, marriages, because a lot of people aren't. And we're focused on the religious aspects, quote unquote, religious, and neglecting how true religion, true ways of life more so, cannot exist except through, like, they exist in a context. They exist in a society. They cannot exist without a democracy. These religions, these spiritualities need societies. They need people to govern them. And so I get that Islam is a complete way of life and there is a system of governance that comes with that as well. However, when we really are following even the Sharia law, we will see that it is not incompatible with the laws of the land, or the urf, what is known as the urf, the customs. And so I say all this because I don't think a lot of this was discussed in detail growing up. I know I did go to some marriage preparation classes in my teens and so on. And there was definitely mention of divorce and, like, don't do it. It's to be avoided, and here's why. There was also mention of abuse and how this is an epidemic in our community. However, when it came to them being correlated, the divorce rates and the abuse, when it came to specifically distinguishing our ways of going about marriage, it's something that's not talked about because it's surprisingly easy. It wasn't until a certain relation of mine, being more in contact with this relation and seeing how they move through marriages very quickly, that I started to come to realize that, wow, this isn't actually as, how do I say? So for instance, with civil divorce, I'm grateful because it's very structured. It's a very long process. And that is often what is alluded to, or what people hint at when marriage is discussed. It's a long process. It's, and getting out of it is even longer, and so on and so forth. And yet, growing up in Muslim communities, I think that there was always an assumption of it being more religious versus like a civil legal issue and matter. And so now that I'm actually seeing that for the first time, how civil marriage is formed and dissolved according to U.S. standards, I feel so much empowerment, frankly, as a woman. And I think in general, I think it's just an interesting third party to have involved. No, I am not encouraging divorce. I'm not encouraging any of this. It's something I wouldn't wish on anyone. No. But I would say, compared to what I've been through, I think that it's something really valuable that a lot of messages push civil and religious divorce. Or marriage. They require you to civilly marry before you present it to them for a religious marriage contract, otherwise known as a nikah. And I'm preaching to the choir for a lot of people. However, I did want to speak to those like myself who were a little more green to the distinctions in terms of, in terms of the results. Both have different results. Often when people are seeking religious marriages, a lot of times it is not as protected. This is how things can go under the rug, such as polygyny. It's going to put the elephant in the room, which is illegal in the U.S. And it's for a cause, because it's not just silly Western standards, but you get into things like laws of the land when it comes to the land, when it comes to the children, when it comes to the finances, when it comes to, again, these safety precautions. It's very hard to have these protections that often come with that, and rights if you're not documenting it with your country. So this is also complicated when there are multiple parties involved versus just one to one. So it gets deep. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not here pretending to be a lawyer, but I am here to be transparent about just thankfulness. Like, the process that I'm finalizing and I'm going through is something that I wish was more modeled and more spoken about in terms of civil and legal processes. And it costs. In the best case scenario, it's going to cost you to file the divorce, let alone for the lawyers and things like that. In the best case scenario, you won't need lawyers. It won't be contested, and so on and so forth. But I think the benefit of, well, why I could see somebody doing religious-only marriages to kind of defend my own younger self and many people who are in those situations is that it is more simple. It can seem more simple on the front end. But on the back end, if you, for whatever reason, need to back out, or you, whatever it is, you are really in a bind because, again, you don't have that paper trail. You don't have that legal backing, and there's not even like commonplace law marriages anymore, I don't think, which used to be kind of like if you live together and so on and so forth. So anyways, having a civil divorce, it just feels so much more sane. It feels so much less like crazy making and like just narc bait. I think that a lot of times people who go into these religious only marriages are narc bait, and that's not to blame them or to shame them or anything, but I think a lot of times what we don't repair, we repeat. And if we do not break a cycle through something very hard line like civil interventions, that pattern will repeat. It will repeat with our children and their offspring and their offspring's offspring. So it has to stop somewhere. And again, I would say that I'm so grateful for just having that third party first and foremost. Because some people would not even go as far as marriage. They would just say, yeah, just don't get married, shack up, and so on and so forth. And I think that anytime, the more involvement you can get in terms of professional third parties, the better. And some people say that marriage counselors are marriage cancelers and so on. I can see a case for that. But I think with discretion, with selection, with intention, like this is what we're going to talk about in this session, this is what we're not going to talk about, and so on, and like knowing yourself really well and having a self-aware partner, that a marriage counselor can be quite a cool tool in your toolkit, as well as a lawyer, as well as a trusted guardian or family member or a friend, and so on and so forth. Like, I think that we have to really cherry pick and be selective with our third parties. But again, the more the better. And it seems like common sense to a lot of people, but to others, common sense is not so common. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the process of learning and being able to share that with those who be as socialized and like socially aware. It's like nobody tells you some things. You will just be left with a bunch of books and things here and there, and it's really a reason to be appreciative when you can learn through experience. That's how I'm looking at it. I'm learning through experience, and as I learn, I want to share. So go ahead and share what you're grateful for, because you never know. It could be an experience that you formerly felt was absolutely, positively just out of the picture. Like, I know the first time I got married, it was just something I did not foresee. And it's funny because nobody thinks that way. it's very easy in hindsight to say like, oh, like you should do XYZ, you should have XYZ. But in the moment, nobody gets married to divorce. Nobody imagines that for themselves. And even the third time around with this civil marriage, my first civil marriage, I did not foresee divorce. I may have foreseen separation. I may have foreseen even having certain complications because of the nature of our union being interracial, international, and so on. But this was a guy who had actually been in Tucson before. He had lived several years there and had the proof, and his father is here in the US, and so on and so forth. So, and I had also been to the Middle East myself. So let me just peace out. Yes, I see. Before you guys see something that you're not supposed to see. And until tomorrow, or the day after tomorrow.